Hi, my name is Betsy Bohan and I want to welcome you back to my channel. I don't normally post before Saturdays, I just usually post about once a week, but I just wanted to talk about The Chosen again and some things that are just so wonderful about it. And just to let you know, I don't know anybody in The Chosen. I had started watching The Chosen during season 1 and then paid it forward for about a year. But anyway, my husband and I support by buying the merch and going to the theaters when it's been shown in theaters. And so go to the theater and see the finale, because we're going to be there too. Not at the one in Texas. We're just going to be going to a local theater. But that all supports the efforts of The Chosen. And why am I so why am I loving The Chosen so much? Okay, so here is the thing for me. I'm a nurse, okay, and I've been a nurse since 1980, and I've been a nurse, a registered nurse throughout the spectrum of life. So I also saw a lot of death from prenatal all the way through the end of hospice being there. And so when you see a lot of death, you know, you are very aware that there will come a time and an end for everybody, and we just don't always know what it is. My saying was always, nobody in the hospital really expects to be there or plans on being there, not even some of the pregnant women, right? We don't know what the next day is. And so why it's so important and why I love The Chosen and the episodes and the way that Dallas Jenkins and his crew is making it, and the way God seems to be organizing it, is that it does an awesome job of displaying both the humanity and divinity of Jesus. And I think in a lot of prior movies and things we've seen, a lot more is based more on his divinity and not his humanity. And as I mentioned in my last video about the 3 reasons to watch The Chosen, Jesus, the name that he liked to be referred to most was the Son of Man, because the Father sent him. It says in John 6:38, I didn't come to do my own will and purpose, but I came to do the will and the purpose of the Father. And what was that will and purpose of the Father? It was to redeem us, mankind, back to himself, because of the fall in the garden, because of the choices of Adam and Eve to sin and rebel against God. And so we've all carried that down in our nature, right? And God established the law and a special covenant with Israel, but even with them, nobody could keep it. Nobody could keep the covenant. That's why they had to have daily sacrifice, because it was a temporary cover for the sins of the nation. But now here comes Jesus, both God and man. Because why? Well, there's several reasons I could name. Is to fulfill the promises that he made to Abraham, that through his seed the whole world would be blessed and his descendants would be greater than the sands of the sea of sand. I mean, and his promise to David to have somebody sit on his line as on his for kingdom. They thought it was going to be a kingdom that rose up and crushed the Romans and crushed all those that were over. But no, it was a kingdom far greater, far more important than a temporary earthly kingdom, right? And Jesus was out of the line of Judah, which is the same tribe that David was out of, who was the king over Israel. Jesus fulfilled prophecies. And being born in Bethlehem, and being in Nazareth, so he could be referred to as that he was a Nazarene. So he was born for promises, prophecies, to identify with man, to know what it was like to be tempted in every way but without sin. His nature was that of God, although he was in the form of man and had skin. He had a birthday, right? Just like us, just like you. He had skin, bones, and even in what I love in Hebrews and also in Colossians chapter 1 verse 15, they're very similar verses where they say Jesus is the exact representation of the Father. He is the invisible God made visible, and as such has his characteristics. And without talking about the other reasons for why Jesus came, this is kind of the one I want to focus on for this video, is that he was God, but he was also man, but without a sin nature, because he was going to redeem us. And he was the fulfillment of the covenant so that a new covenant could be made. He was the fulfillment. He fulfilled every aspect of the law. And so, but Jesus, in his humanity, I just think about how, as a nurse, how we get injured, how we get hurt, how we have all that. Jesus experienced that by the time he was 33 in the garden and praying that God, if it be possible, Father, if it be possible, take this cup away from me, but nevertheless, not my will, but your will. He said that 3 times, and whenever God says something 3 times in his word, there's an emphasis on it. So I know that a lot of us are just thinking ahead about how gut-wrenching it's going to be because we are just falling in love with this Jesus. Why? Because, well, he's like somebody that's living out the fruits of the Spirit. And for those of you that maybe don't know the fruits of the Spirit, they're listed in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. And it's the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And don't you see these lived out in this Jesus and the chosen? I mean, the sense of joy, his peace, this compassion and gentleness with little James when he was asking him, why haven't you healed me? And he was so compassionate and explaining that isn't it a far greater thing, an act of God, to use a man who has an illness or a disability to heal others, that God can even use all of us. I have disabilities and I have even PTSD because of the things I've been through. But God, in his grace, when he saved me at 17 and all through these years, has made a tremendous transformation in my life. That's not the story for today, but it does remind me that Jesus, by the time he was 33, knew the hardships of this life. I'm sure he had hurt himself many times. As children, we fall down. As a carpenter, I don't know, maybe he hit himself with his hammer. Maybe he got slivers. I don't know. And surely by that time, most of us have been at the end of other people's unkindness. I know in the Bible it says that he grew and he was in favor with God and man. But then, people, that was probably a general thing. Can you imagine even having brothers under you that were like, well, Jesus is always perfect. Jesus always does it right, Mom. Dad, you know how that goes. Well, Jesus lived in humanity. But recently, and in the past, but just most recently, I had a dear friend that was suffering and very discouraged and down, and been really praying for this person. And one morning I woke up after having prayed for her and talked to her on the phone and trying to encourage her, and I felt such a depression on my own self, so down, and I'm, oh my goodness, what is this? I don't want this. This is not typical of me. I had an experience way serious in 2014, and it was like, I do not want to go through that again, Lord. Ooh, I have got to brush this off myself. I've got to encourage myself in the Lord like David did when he was discouraged. That's what Psalms is so good, right? And so I encouraged myself in the Lord, and that did leave. But it made me think about, wow, if we can't even tolerate the discomfort of carrying one person's burdens, one person's sorrow. But just to feel this, it reminded me of Jesus. When he bore the sins of mankind, and he bore our sicknesses, our sorrows, all those things that we suffer in life, he bore them in his own body. And yes, he was God, but he was human. Could you even imagine what it might have been like? Yeah. Incomparable. I don't think that we could ever understand the depth of what Jesus went through us. And why am I speaking that about now when we still have series to go on The Chosen before that time comes? Because I want to encourage people to pay attention to his humanity as well as his divinity, because he's establishing in the end of season, during season 2 and season 3, his divinity through the miracles, through the deliverance. He's establishing who he is and what he came to do. But he is also living this through a physical body like you and I, but without sin, without making sinful choices, even though he's tempted in all ways like us to sin. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about today. And I just want to encourage those of you that haven't watched The Chosen to watch it. I just really feel there is an anointing on this show. There's a lot of things God is doing to reach out to people, because God desires relationship with people. He wants you to know him. He wants you to know how he sent Jesus to die for our sins so that we could be born into his family. That's what born again means. Born once, we're born once in the flesh, like our physical body, but then we can be born again in our spirits because of Jesus, and by believing him and the gospel and accepting him and his ways into our life, and the Holy Spirit that lived in him and motivated him and moved him to do the will of the Father can do the same for us. If you haven't watched The Chosen yet, I encourage you to go on their app. It's under the Angel app now, but you can certainly Google The Chosen and it'll bring up information and tell you how to get the app. I have it on my phone, and then you can cast it to your TV or Roku. You can watch it on your phone, tablet, laptop, whatever device. But I am encouraging you as one who has been transformed by Jesus Christ, the Jesus from Nazareth that they thought nothing good can come from Nazareth, when truly the best thing ever came from Nazareth, Jesus, and salvation for us, and transformation, and his kingdom. So I would encourage you to get the app, and then maybe, I tell you, when you start watching, it's very easy to binge watch Jesus. Okay, I think they have a shirt, they have some merch with Binge Jesus, right? And so you could binge him, and then you could get to the theaters in time to see the finale of season 3. Thanks for stopping here, and I encourage you in following Jesus.